Welcome, everybody. My name is Magdalena, and I work as a project manager, international business for SIBB Association. Let me welcome you in this not the best day today because of the weather, but I hope we'll have very warm atmosphere here during this webinar. Let me introduce you very shortly our association. SIBB is a digital businesses association from Berlin-Brandenburg. And we are networking the most important stakeholders in the region related to digital economy. And very important aspect of our association is to international collaboration, to stimulate international collaboration with main three directions: Poland, Russia, and the United States. And in frame of our Deep Tech Hub project, we are focusing on the collaboration with Polish and Russian partners. And today's webinar is related to our Polish partners. It's very important country for us to collaborate and stimulate ties between IT companies from both sides. We noticed in the recent months that there is quite big interest from both sides in common collaboration, business collaboration. And during our delegation to Wrocław, we had the chance to experience that there's a lot of questions related to legal, fiscal, and marketing issues. How is it to run a business in both countries? What are the main differences? What are the main challenges? But also, it was interesting to see the benefits of doing businesses in both countries. And that's why this webinar today was organized. We decided to invite our experts to give you a bit of teaser and initial dose of information which can support you in doing a business abroad in Poland or Germany. Our today webinar will be composed of three parts. The first part will have legal aspects of doing business both in Poland and Germany, and we invited von Zantier and Schulz Kanzlei to be part and the host of this part of the presentation of the webinar. And then we will have a short networking session where you will have a chance to meet other participants. We had quite balanced attendees today from both countries. And then we'll invite, for the third part, the session will be held in Polish. It will be targeted for Polish companies who are thinking about opening their offices here in Berlin-Brandenburg. Before I give the floor to our speakers, I will ask you very shortly, just very short survey so that we can, just to, wait a minute. Just a survey, just that we have a more or less overview. In which stage are you already? Nikolai, I mean, today with us, I have Nikolai and Władysław who will be supporting me with technical. I don't know why I can't start my own Frage, unfortunately. It seems it's like.
You mean this one, right? Are you considering expansion to Poland, Germany? No.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It started on my laptop.
Okay, thanks you. And if you can just answer this question so that we have more or less overview, in which direction are you thinking to expand? Are you German company going to Poland, or Polish company thinking about expansion to Germany, or it's not yet the time for you? I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I see that 60% have replied, but okay, let's finish it. And you could see the results right now.
Okay, I don't see it, but if you can tell me then what was the majority of participants?
Majority is for Poland, but the answers are very diverse. Most of their options are met.
Okay, then it's also a good thing. Okay, thank you very much, Nikolai, for support. Yeah, so then I will give the floor to our first speaker, for Kamil Niciecki, who will tell us more about the legal aspects of German law and how is it for the companies and coming here doing business, especially with the when you're coming from Poland. Kamil, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. Could you just confirm that you all can hear me and see the presentation I just started?
Yes, we see presentation and we hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I would like to bring you a little bit about the ways to successfully enter the German market. That will be my topic. A quick word of introduction. I come from the law firm von Santier & Schulz. We are a German-Polish law firm with offices in Poznań and Warszawa. Actually, my colleague from Poznań, Wojciech Pareć, will be the second speaker today, and he will bring you more about entering the Polish market a little bit. Yes, as I said, we have almost 30 years of experience in this area, and our main focus are clients that have international interests between Poland and Germany, which is why we decided to participate in today's meeting and explain you a little bit how to do it from the legal perspective. So, in the beginning, I wanted to say that this is actually a very complicated process to enter the foreign market, even if it's a neighbor like Germany. And there are many things you have to consider. Today, I wanted to give you just a little information about that, and especially about 4 points that you have to consider legally. First will be way to enter German market, what to do legally. The second one will be things that is a problem for many firms, which is the data protection, general data protection regulation and what it entitles in Germany, because even though it is a single regulation for all European Union, there are some differences and different takes on the interpretation of this regulation. Then I would give you a few informations about the possibility of company management when you start to developing your company in the other country. And some interesting things, perhaps, for you is topics considering employment law in Germany, this is mainly for the Polish firms, which is very different in Germany. Okay, so to begin, how to enter the German market? How to enter German market? You have basically 3 possible routes. The first one is simply selling your wares and services from Poland to Germany without. It is a very simple one. You have your company in Poland and target German customers. Seems very easy, although there are some things you have to consider. One are, of course, the tax issues, which are very complicated, and I will not bore you today with this, because it very much depends on what exactly are you selling, how much you're selling, and who to exactly. However, I wanted to point you to one possible solution, which could be interesting if you are really thinking about expanding to Germany, meaning is using a warehouse in Germany, which is completely allowed and is used very often because it has many advantages like shortening the delivery time and making sure it's much easier to deliver your wares to your customers. However, this sounds very easy, but unfortunately it is not, because it again changes a few things, like you have to register this by in Germany, and you have to also consider the tax consequences for it. Also, another thing that is very specific to Germany is the Packaging Act. In German, it's Verpackungsgesetz, which is a set of obligations you have to do if you sell anything in Germany that is packed in any way. This entitles another set of registration obligations, which you have to follow unless you want to pay a fee, which can be pretty substantial. That is about obligations you have to do, but what I wanted to turn your attention to is actually it may not be a preferred way to enter German market, because many customers will hesitate to do business with you, especially if you're not targeting simple customers, but other firms. And it's not actually a question of prejudice on the German side. There are 2 pragmatic reasons for this hesitation. One is usually when doing business with Poland, with buying from Polish companies, the applicable law and applicable court will be in Poland. And not many German firms want to then go to Poland in case there's a problem with your delivery. Then, of course, there's the issue of recovery, because even if something goes wrong and the German firm wins, they will have to recover the damages from a Polish company, which, even though we are on the union, it's actually pretty complicated. Which is why I wanted to end this telling that even though it's an easy solution, it may not be the preferable one, especially if you're really thinking about expanding to German market. The second way is to simply register as a merchant in Germany. Then, of course, you won't have the problems I mentioned before, because you will be working from Germany. It's also pretty easy. You have to register, but it brings a risk to you, because as a simple merchant, you will be liable with your personal money. And of course, there are some image issues, because simple merchants are usually very small. They don't sell very much, and then are not taken seriously by many companies, which is why it's actually not a preferred method. The best, often the best way is to simply form a limited liability company in Germany, which actually you have two possible ways to go. One is simple LLC, which we call Gesellschaft mit beschränkter Haftung, GmbH. Other Germany has another option for you, which is UG, eine Unternehmensgesellschaft. So what are the reasons for establishing an LLC in Germany? Well, you don't have any problems I mentioned before. There are no image issues. There are not trust issues, because no German firm will have troubles, will not hesitate to make business with another German company. And of course, you are not personally liable for any damages. That's the whole point of limited liability company. Now, what's the difference between the two possibilities I mentioned? The difference between GmbH and UG? It's simply how much money you have to invest. Because you see, in German, it is necessary, if you want to form a LLC, to invest at least 25,000 euros in it from your own pocket, which for some can be a lot, especially when you're only beginning to invest in German market. The UG, the other way, doesn't have this necessity. You only have to invest €1. So it's actually often recommended way if you're just starting on a German market. As I said, you don't have any image issues. You're not liable with your personal belongings, and yet still you have a German company which you can use to make business. It's actually a pretty standard way to form such an LLC. There are, of course, some steps you have to do, like go to a notary, prepare all the documents, but it's actually pretty simple because it is done so much. There are over, I believe, over 200,000 LLCs in Germany as of now, probably even more, but it's very fluid. Which is why you should really consider it if you truly believe you can enter German market. Okay. Now, the other way, you have, no matter what which way you choose, there is some things you have to watch out for, meaning the data protection. I know, of course, in Poland, this is also a thing. RODO is a problem for many companies, but German is very strict about it. For example, many don't know that if you want to make business in Germany, no matter which way you choose from the three mentioned before, if you use a website, you have to meet special requirements on this website. And it comes as a surprise to many. Basically, any website is concerned with GDPR. No matter if you sell something through a website or it's simply for marketing purposes, even if you simply put a logo and the contact information, you have to watch out for these regulations, because even simple website collects data from visitors, like an IP and their IP addresses. And that's enough to start GDPR concerns. And for example, if you have such a website, you have to put very specific documentation on it, like a GDPR compliance statement. You have to watch out for the cookies policy, which, for example, has this opt-in option, which is very technical, but it's a complete necessity, which means that the visitor has to, must have a possibility to choose not to follow your policy. Many people don't know that, many people forget it, and many people pay for it. The same goes for social media plugins. It is very, very popular because most of us use Facebook or LinkedIn or other ways of social media, which we want to incorporate on our website to make it more appealing. But then you have to put a special statement in regard to data protection on your website. The same goes, of course, for newsletter, but this actually is pretty obvious for most. As I said, this is just a few, probably the most important, but a few things you have to take in consideration if you want to start your business in Germany. But of course, a website is not everything. Actually, that's only the beginning. The real problem with GDPR is the necessary documentation you have to create for your company. The most important one, I believe it's also in Poland, but my colleague Wojciech can tell you more about it, probably, is a record of processing activities, which basically means you have to create a list of all activities you do in your firm, no matter how small, if they have anything to do with the data protection. Another thing, most important, is the assessment of technical and organizational measures, which means you have to be able to show, in case of an audit, how exactly you go on about data protection. And this is actually a very problematic matter for many companies, because this entails the way you go about your emails, about your documents, about your communication with the clients. The thing I would like to turn your attention to always is the case of WhatsApp. I believe many people use it also in business, but WhatsApp as it is a violation of GDPR, which many people don't know because it sends its data to United States, which is not a part of your European Union. Which is why if you want to do business in Germany, you have to pay attention to such things, because these things will be controlled. And if anything is in violation of the GDPR, you may be liable to extensive fees. Which is my next point, because you cannot take these regulations easily. I just wanted to bring your attention to three most recent penalties that were given in Germany, which is in millions. As you can see, last year, there was a penalty of 35 million because some company didn't store their data properly. Of course, if you're just starting, it won't be it big, but I wanted to really tell you that in Germany, it's a serious matter and you cannot take it lightly. Okay, so now other things maybe that interests people who are just starting in the market is how to manage a company that you opened in Germany. First of all, many people ask if it's possible to manage a company from abroad. In this case, it would be from Poland. The answer is yes, but there are some limitations. First of all is the CEO. Of course, it's completely possible to have a CEO that lives in Poland and manages the company, but it has to be registered in a proper way, especially because of the taxes, which can be problematic because the place of management is where all the managers live and manage the company. If it's stated that it's in Poland, you may have troubles with registering your company. That's for one, which is why many people choose to hire a CEO, especially for the reason to be a German company, even though everyone who's really in charge sits in Poland. This is one possibility to solve this problem, but you have to really watch out. Because if you be controlled and something goes wrong, there can be some real penalties for this. The same goes for the second most popular question: is it possible to hire a virtual office? Because especially at the start, many people don't want to rent an office, for example, in Berlin, which can be extremely expensive. They just want to use what's called a virtual office, which is basically you hire another firm to check your mail, to answer your calls, and to forward everything to you without actually being present in Germany. And although it's very popular, I have to warn you, it's extremely problematic because there have been many cases of fraud where some companies used this system to launder money or make other kind of violations. So there are actually very strict controls of it. And although it's still possible to establish such a virtual office, you have to be very careful what you get yourself into. But as I said, it is possible, but it won't be easy, which is why you should actually take professional help and only hire established companies who help you with that. But if you have any interest, we actually work with some company that specializes in that and will be able to help you in a legal and safe way to establish a virtual office so that you can cut your cost at the beginning. Okay. And the last thing I wanted to bring your attention to is employment law, in case you start something a little bit bigger than just a CEO and the website. Because there are differences between Polish and German employment law. One is in regard to hiring of employees, and especially in regard to firing them. Because you must know in Germany, there is something we call Kündigungsschutzgesetz, which is law of protection against termination. It's, again, pretty complicated, but you have to know that if you hire an employee and it's for longer than 6 months, you cannot get rid of him so easily. The same, for the same reason, you cannot just hire an employee for a set period of time and then say goodbye to him. There are some limitations to it, which were made for protecting the employees. That's why hiring an employee should be a very thought out decision. Then you have to, of course, know it is possible to simply delegate your employees from Poland. This is a very good solution for the companies that are already established in Poland and want to try to enter German market, but because of the reasons I mentioned in point A, they don't want to hire employees, especially from Germany, because they don't need them full time, but they would love to delegate some employees for set periods of time. And that is completely possible under German law, although there are some restrictions. The biggest restriction is you can freely delegate employees from Poland, which have not from the countries outside of the European Union. That is still possible, but far more complicated. And even then, if you delegate someone from Poland, it can usually be only for a set period of time or for a concrete task. Still, it can be a very good solution if you're just starting and are not sure if you succeed on the German market. For the same reason, I wanted just to briefly mention the possibility of remote work, which got very popular in the recent days because of COVID. And there are some regulations in Germany, but that's actually one of the very few good news I wanted to give you. It's still very possible, and that's very easy to do. All you have to do is make sure that your employee at home usually have all the necessary means to protect your data. And besides that, if it's possible, you can just do it usually. All you have to do is basically give a special annotation in the employee contract. And beside that, you are ready to go. It is even possible from Poland, which means if you don't want to send someone physically, you can just establish a remote working conditions and solve it this way. Okay, as I said, those are just few examples of things you have to consider from the legal perspective when you try to enter a German market. This is actually a little complicated, but can be very worth it. Germany is a very big market, and we have very good, well, let's say we have very good contact with Poland, and we do much business with you. So this is a good market for you, hopefully. And as I said, this is everything from me. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I will be here after from the networking session. And of course, don't hesitate to contact me in any way. Now, I believe I would like to give the floor to my colleague from Poznan, who will give you possibly similar information, but in regards to Poland.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
please. Now
thank you.
we'll have to Wojciech Parish. And let's see, I mean, of course, it's a very complicated issue to go to another country. Let's see how is it to going to Poland? Is it a bit easier, or is it also so quite complex issue, I would assume? Wojciech, the floor is yours.
Okay, could you please confirm that you can hear me and that you can see my screen?
Yes, we see you, and I mean, we see presentation and we hear you well.
Okay, give me a sec because, okay, I think it's okay. Second, please. Okay,
we just
okay.
don't see the full screen presentation mode. We just see the whole conspect at the left side.
Ah, okay,
If you
that's interesting. That's interesting. And
maybe
yet,
if you move,
no?
maybe if you move a slide, can you move slide a bit?
Yeah, I do it. Do you see it?
It doesn't move at my computer. Just a minute.
Mr. Wojciech,
Mm-hmm.
you can share the entire screen and not particular
Okay,
application.
okay.
That will work for you.
That's
Thank you.
Yes, that's good solution.
Yeah, because
Sure.
it was freezed a bit.
Okay, I have two screens, maybe that's the reason. Ekran, exactly. It's my ekran, second ekran. Okay, and now?
Now we see full screen, and can you move it slightly? Just yeah, now it works.
Yeah, it's
everywhere.
okay?
Perfect. Yes, everything
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, it will be a bit strange because I have two screens and my presentation is on the another in comparison to my camera, but I think I will handle it. Okay, so let's start. My name is Parish Wojciech. I'm attorney at law in Poland and work in Fond Santier Schulz-Dachowski tax and law firm. And at the very beginning, I would like to say that as a law firm, we saw in this year a lot of movement in IT sector. We got plenty inquiries regarding opening and conducting business in Poland from IT companies from Germany, from Switzerland, and other European countries. And that's why I want to focus on this question we got recently, the most frequent asked questions. That's it's my part of the webinar. So let's start. Like Kamil already said, it's the first question: is it really necessary to register in Poland at all? Because since Poland is in European Union, it's actually from legal perspective, there are no obstacles to render services or to hire staff directly from abroad. So it's not necessary to open an entity or to open a branch in Poland. But when you decided to do so not to open an entity, there is, like Kamil already said, there is a tax issue you have to be aware of, which is permanent tax establishment. That's the proper legal word for it, because not conducting business in Poland doesn't mean that you don't have to pay taxes in Poland. The main rule is you have to pay taxes from your profit from Poland. So as a side note, please be aware that it may be an issue for you if you decided to render services directly from abroad. That's the first option. But if you already decided to register in Poland, there are several options you may choose from. The first is conducting business as a sole tradership. It's only an option for an individual, so let's leave it on the side. I think most of us are companies. So another option is opening a branch, and then opening an entity. I would like to go straight to the limited company, because it's the most the most common entity established in IT sector. And I also think it's the easiest way to conduct business in Poland. In comparison to Germany, the share capital is quite little. It's only 5,000 Polish zloty. It's a bit more than 1,000 euro. Yeah, it's not formal, actually, conducting business in this form, because you don't have to appoint supervisory board. All resolution you will pass during your business may be in written form. So I think it's more or less simple. Okay. Nowadays, there are two ways of establishment of LLC. Polish name is spółka z, spółka z ograniczoną odpowiedzialnością, is very similar like German GmbH or English limited company. And these two ways, the first is digital procedure and the second is written procedure. Let's start with a written procedure, written standard procedure. That's the normal way. So you go to the notary public, enter into articles of association, and so on and so on. And in comparison, there is another option, digital procedure. I'm a very big fan of it because it's very time saving. As you can see on the slide, actually during 1 week, the company will be established. You don't have to go to the notary. And there is actually only one disadvantage, that because the company will be established via internet platform provided by our government, so you don't have to. It's not possible to shape the articles of association freely. You only have to you have to use some template. But I think at the end of the day, it's not a problem at all, because after the establishment, if necessary, you can change the articles of association. Okay, so on this slide, you can see what the standard way how the standard way looks like. Approximately, it took up to 3 months for the company to be ready for doing business in Poland, because after you entered into articles of association, you have to register at court, and it can last 2 or 3 months. Then you have to register for VAT purposes, and then you have to open a bank account. In Poland, it's necessary to have a bank account. And in comparison, now we can see how does it look like when it comes to digital way, to digital procedure. Disadvantage of this procedure is also that this internet platform is only in Polish language. But as a law firm, we handle it this way, that we establish the company for our clients. So after the establishment, we sell the shares. So during maybe 1.5 months, then the Polish limited company established in digital way will be ready for business, as you can see on the slide. So I think it's the most preferable way to open an entity in Poland nowadays, especially in IT sector, from my experience. Okay, when the company is already established, the first question which arises is how to hire the staff. And there are actually 2 options when it comes to IT staff, IT personnel. One option is B2B, so-called B2B, business-to-business contracts, and another option is employment contract. Let's start with B2B contracts. In this case, your staff will be conducting business by their own, actually. This solution is, I would say, favorable when it comes to taxes and when it comes to social contributions, because taxes and contributions are lower in comparison to employment contract. But there is a price for it you have paid, because there is a potential risk that this kind of contract will be considered by Polish tax authority as an employment contract. It's possible. And in this situation, the difference in taxes and in contributions will be paid, and also retroactively, which means that up to 6 years back. So at the end of the day, it may be a huge amount of money. When it comes to employment contract, there is no risk, but the contract is actually more expensive for the employer. When it comes to risk, there is a question: how high is the risk? I would say average, but it's up to the shape of the contract. It's up to, yes, it's not so complicated. It's not so easy to say. It's always, we have to always decide in specific case. Okay, that was the first part of my short presentation. Let's go strictly to the next very big topic, which is taxation of the doing business in Poland and taxation of the contract with the staff. And let's see whether we handle it during our time. Okay, when it comes to taxation of our LCC, so in Poland we are actually two tax rates. The normal is, I am talking about income tax. The normal tax rate is 19%, and there is also the reduced tax rate, but only small taxpayer may benefit from it, and small taxpayer are entities with income below 2 million euro. Probably you know it from your countries. I think it's more or less similar, or maybe it's the same story. Polish limited company is so-called double taxed, and that means that there is a taxation. There's a tax to pay on the level of company. It's so-called CIT, income tax, Polish income tax, and the second tax comes at the level of the owner, so shareholder. So when you will pay the dividend to the shareholders, the dividend will also be taxed, has also been taxed, but there is one big exemption, like you can see on the slide. And I think it's not so very hard to fulfill the requirements, because this shareholder may benefit from this tax exemption that owns directly at least 10% of shares and possess certificates of residence. So I think it's not so hard to fulfill this. Okay, so that was in a nutshell taxation of the company. Let's go straight to the taxation of the staff contracts. And let's start with employment, because it's easier. Actually, there is no choice, because employment contract is always taxed with scale. And in Poland, we have two thresholds. The first is 17%, and the second is 32%. And the second threshold applies when employee earns over 120,000 Polish zloty in a year. When it comes to B2B contracts, there are several options to choose from. Actually, that's the reason why B2B contracts are more beneficial when it comes to fiscal aspects. The first option, that's the same scenario like in employment contracts. So it's tax scale, the same thresholds, the same tax rates. And the next option, the second option, is flat tax of 19%. So regardless the income, the tax will be the same, 19%. And the third option is so-called tax on registered income. And that is to say, more or less similar to flat tax, with two big differences. Because the first difference is you cannot, if you use registered income, you cannot deduct your expenses. That's the first difference. And the second difference is not everybody can take benefit from this taxation form, tax form, because it's dedicated to specific positions at work, I would say. And when it comes to IT sector, especially software developer can benefit from it. In this scenario, the tax rate amounts 12%. Okay. The next slide is very, very complicated. It's about IP box, but I saying in a nutshell. When you are active in R&D sector, so research and development, and when you develop qualified intellectual property rights, and as a result of it, you develop patent or utility model or industrial pattern and so on, you may taxed. You may use reduced tax rate of 5%. There are many requirements you have to fulfill, but the key point is the 5% of tax, and that's current rate. From January 2022, the total burden will be a bit higher because it will be, you can see it on the bottom of the screen, it will be 13% because our legislation will change in 2 weeks, I think. Okay, that's so-called IP box, very, very popular. Very popular in IT sector. We got plenty of questions concerning this topic. Next, Next topic is the so-called increased deductible costs. This issue is connected only with employment contracts. And you can use it. You can use it when your employees are active in, when your employees do some creative work, including programming, when they are making up some program code, and as a result of it, they transfer the rights to this code to you as an employer, then you can use this increased deductible costs of 50%, which means that at the end of the day, the net value, the net salary will be much higher. And that's the benefit of this taxation. Okay, and I think I don't know how much time I still have.
Yeah, 2 more minutes.
Okay, so
to sum up, wrap up.
Okay, so maybe at the very end, I will say, because it's hot topic in Poland to use B2B contract or to use employment contract. From my experience, when it comes to IT sector, from our clients from IT sector, it's more or less 50-50. 50% of our clients in IT sector uses employment contract, and 50% of them uses B2B sector. It's actually your choice, and it's up to your politics, more or less. Okay, that's as a short summary.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we can see it's a really broad topic, and of course today we can't go very into details about all the aspects, but we'll be sending this recording from today's webinar together with the contact details to our speaker. So if you will be already about to doing some activities, you feel welcome to contact our speakers and get more information when needed. I will invite you now for a very short networking session. Unfortunately, I think it's already a bit Christmas atmosphere, and not all the registered participants join us today. So we'll do very short breakout session. We have just 2 breakout rooms. Zoom will do it automatically, so we will land with some other colleagues in the breakout room. And after 10 minutes, we'll come back for the last third session of the webinar. Witam, dzień dobry. Jestem z panią.
Nic nie widać.
Tak, no właśnie widzę, teraz jest pani po ciemnej stronie nocy.
Tak, muszę chyba światło zapalić.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had short, very quite intensive networking session. We had, as mentioned, this first session where we were using English language, to discuss about differences in German and Poland approaching the markets. And now we switched into Polish language, and we will focus this session especially for the companies who are interested in opening up office here in Berlin. We have with us Mrs. Alina Winarski from 2024 office, and I will switch now to Polish. Finn, I hope it was interesting for you. I know you are of course, you are welcome to stay with us and practice your Polish. I will switch now to Polish if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. It was very interesting, but unfortunately my Polish is not enough to follow this. So.
Yeah, but it's something to hopefully for the future, but I hope it was interesting. And of course, we'll send all the contact details so you can stay in touch later with Wojciech or Kamil, and I hope they will support you with your expansion to Poland.
Great. Okay, great.
Thank you for joining us today.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Tak, i teraz przejdziemy na język polski, chyba już zostali sami polscy uczestnicy. Oddaję głos pani Alinie.
Dzień dobry, witam Państwa serdecznie. Mam nadzieję, że jeszcze mam do kogo mówić. Przedstawię się zatem króciutko, żeby nie zabierać też czasu. Tak jak Pani wspomniała, reprezentuję firmę TradeOffice24.com. Nasza firma jest firmą konsultingową. Od 20 lat jesteśmy w Berlinie, wprowadzamy firmy polskie na rynek niemiecki. Mamy też swoją siedzibę we Wrocławiu, w Wrocławskim Parku Technologicznym. Tam z kolei opiekujemy się firmami niemieckimi, które są na rynku polskim. Wspieramy firmy kompleksowo, czyli właściwie z jednej ręki oferujemy wszystkie usługi. Mamy na miejscu doradztwo podatkowe, doradztwo prawne. Oczywiście oferujemy firmom też to, co jest niezbędne, czyli taki klasyczny serwis biurowy i adres dla firm, niezależnie od branży, oczywiście dla firm z branży IT także. I przejdę od razu do rzeczy teraz, bo podatki są może mało pasjonującą rzeczą, ale postaram się to powiedzieć krótko i treściwie, ale od razu zaznaczam, że jestem do Państwa dyspozycji w każdej chwili. Potem jak pojawią się jakieś pytania, chętnie też doślę jakieś informacje. Natomiast wiem, że Państwo w tej chwili mieliście wyczerpujący bardzo wykład czy informacje na temat kwestii podatkowych, kwestii prawnych, czyli form prawnych i to jest właściwie kwestie opodatkowania są ściśle związane z formami prawnymi, dlatego jakby będzie to taka krótka rekapitulacja, ale bez tych aspektów prawnych. W zależności od tego, na jaką formę prawną się zdecydujemy, z takim obciążeniem podatkowym musimy się liczyć. Najprostszą formą prawną jest oczywiście prowadzenie takiej klasycznej działalności gospodarczej i taka klasyczna działalność gospodarcza oczywiście musi być opodatkowana podatkiem od osób fizycznych. W Niemczech taki podatek od osób fizycznych kształtuje się, znaczy naliczany jest progresywnie, czyli trochę inaczej niż w Polsce, nie ma takich klasycznych progów podatkowych i to jest od 14% do 45%. Jeżeli zdecydujemy się na inną formę prawną, czyli nie działalność gospodarczą, lecz na przykład spółkę kapitałową, wówczas mamy podatek od osób prawnych i wtedy podatek ten wynosi 15%. Czyli tak naprawdę, ja powiem oczywiście o takich tych typowych rzeczach, bo nie da się oczywiście powiedzieć wszystkiego, mamy parę minut, więc po prostu pokazać jakby tylko taki zarys. Czyli mamy albo 14% do 45%, albo 15%, jeżeli mówimy o podatku dochodowym od osób prawnych. W Niemczech mamy jeszcze taki podatek, który nazywa się Gewerbesteuer, to jest podatek od działalności gospodarczej, to jest taki ewenement, powiedziałabym, bo nie wiem, chyba w innych krajach czegoś takiego nie ma i to jest podatek, który pobierany jest przez różne gminy i ten podatek trzeba doliczyć do tego, czyli od razu wielu klientów, jak słyszy 15% spółka kapitałowa, sobie myśli, fajnie, to jest taki bardzo komfortowy podatek, no ale niestety muszę Państwa zmartwić, ponieważ ten podatek dla gmin, on kształtuje się też w różnych, ma bardzo różną wysokość i tak naprawdę jest w bardzo skomplikowany sposób naliczany i podatek ten kształtuje się w wysokości od 14% tak naprawdę do 31% aż, czyli w zależności od tego, gdzie zdecydujemy się usadowić daną firmę. My, żeby ułatwić klientom tak naprawdę taką kalkulację, żeby sobie przygotować taki biznesplan, zawsze sugerujemy, żeby kalkulować ten podatek od działalności gospodarczej na wysokości 14%. Co nam to daje w efekcie? W efekcie daje nam to przy spółkach kapitałowych opodatkowanie rzędu 30%. Oczywiście tutaj trudno powiedzieć, że jest to taki podatek standardowy, bo on nigdy nie będzie takiej wysokości idealnie 30% przy każdej firmie. Natomiast myślę, że przy kalkulacji uznając podatek między 25% a 30% nikt nie popełni błędu i można się tylko potem pozytywnie zaskoczyć, jeżeli uda się wyprowadzić firmę troszeczkę inaczej. Przy podatku od działalności gospodarczej trzeba jeszcze dodać jedną rzecz, mianowicie, że działalność gospodarcza, czyli nie spółki kapitałowe, czyli działalność gospodarcza albo tak zwani freelancerzy są z tego podatku zwolnieni. Znaczy, właściwie, przepraszam, nie są zwolnieni, tylko mają jakby kwotę, mają taką ulgę podatkową, czyli ona wynosi 25 000 euro. Freelancerzy natomiast są faktycznie zwolnieni z tego i to mi się wydaje, że w branży IT może być bardzo ciekawa informacja, dlatego że jak wiemy IT to często właśnie jest praca z wolnymi zawodami i tutaj w Niemczech zarówno informatycy, jak i doradcy podatkowi, czy na przykład inżynierowie są właśnie z tego podatku zwolnieni. Czyli wtedy rzeczywiście ten podatek jest, można powiedzieć, w Niemczech korzystny dla tej grupy. To, co jest interesujące na pewno, bo wiem, że zawsze wszyscy porównują kwestię opodatkowania w Polsce i w Niemczech, to jest kwota wolna od podatku. Kwota wolna od podatku w roku 2022 sobie specjalnie zapisałam, bo to się zmieniło teraz, wynosi 984 euro. Jeżeli mamy do czynienia z małżeństwem, to oczywiście ta kwota się podwaja. Tutaj są pewne niuanse, też nie chcę, żeby ktoś potem powiedział, że trochę jest przekłamań w tym, co powiedziałam, dlatego że to są jakby takie 4 grupy, w zależności od tego, czy małżonek, z jakiego kraju będzie pochodził małżonek, bo tutaj są pewne jeszcze takie istotne rzeczy, ale na razie powiedziałam o tym najważniejszym, czyli około 10 000 euro. Ciekawą rzeczą też jest to, że istnieje taka możliwość założenia firmy tak zwanego jako mały przedsiębiorca. Mały przedsiębiorca, czyli wtedy, kiedy nie jest się VAT-owcem. To jest forma no, ciekawa może na pierwszy rzut oka, ale z drugiej strony, jak ja to mówię, w życiu kij ma zawsze 2 końce, więc trzeba uważać, bo jeżeli nie jesteśmy VAT-owcem, to też nie możemy jakby odzyskiwać VAT-u. Więc tu trzeba by się nad tym zastanowić, ale na początek jest to czasami bardzo fajne rozwiązanie, szczególnie dla osób, które na przykład świadczą usługi innym osobom fizycznym. No bo jesteśmy wtedy o ten VAT po prostu odpowiednio tańsi. Ważne jest to, żeby wiedzieć, że żeby skorzystać z tej formy, to nasz dochody czy rachunki, które wystawimy w danym roku, nie mogą przekroczyć kwoty 22 000 euro. I to jest bardzo ważne, bo w momencie, kiedy się tę kwotę przekroczy, to od następnego roku jest się VAT-owcem i trzeba jeszcze ten VAT, którego nie zapłaciliśmy wcześniej, nadpłacić. Czyli to jest bardzo niebezpieczne, więc tej kwoty trzeba naprawdę bardzo, bardzo pilnować. Czyli mamy tak naprawdę 2 formy prawne, o których powiedziałam. Działalność gospodarcza 14 do 45%, spółki kapitałowe 15% plus podatek od działalności gospodarczej około 14%, czyli razem mniej więcej 29-30%. Możliwość prowadzenia działalności jako wolny zawód. Wówczas nie mamy tego podatku od działalności gospodarczej, czyli mamy tak naprawdę tylko taki podatek jak osoby fizyczne. Jest to bardzo dobra forma oraz możliwość małego przedsiębiorstwa, czyli wtedy, kiedy w ogóle nie jesteśmy VAT-owcem. Kwota tutaj jest taka magiczna, 22 000 euro i w następnym roku 50 000 euro. Tak to specjalnie podsumowałam, żebyście Państwo mieli te najważniejsze rzeczy dla siebie. Zakładam, że będą jeszcze potem pytania, na które ja bardzo chętnie odpowiem, albo jestem jak najbardziej dostępna też mailowo, ponieważ zdaję sobie sprawę z tego, że jest to tylko taki sygnał, podanie trochę wartości procentowych, które nie usatysfakcjonują nikogo, ale przynajmniej pokażą jakby zarys, żeby sobie to porównać może z możliwością prowadzenia działalności też w Polsce. Na koniec powiem tylko jeszcze o jednej rzeczy, bo każdy zawsze, wiem tak z doświadczenia, o co pytają klienci. Klienci często pytają, proszę mi powiedzieć, jakie ja będę miał koszty, jak ja się zdecyduję, takie koszty stałe, jak się zdecyduję na prowadzenie działalności gospodarczej w Berlinie. To oprócz tych, no bo podatki to jest zupełnie jasna rzecz, wszędzie podatki płacimy. Natomiast tutaj, jeśli chodzi o prowadzenie działalności gospodarczej, to trzeba zawsze kalkulować sobie koszty stałego prowadzenia biura, administracji i doradztwa podatkowego. To są takie rzeczy, które trzeba zawsze uwzględnić. Jak będziecie Państwo zainteresowani, to zapraszamy oczywiście do współpracy do nas, bo oferujemy, tak jak zaznaczyłam, właściwie wszystkie usługi z jednej ręki, bądź też polecamy partnerów, jeżeli ktoś potrzebuje bardzo wyspecjalizowanych usług. To by było chyba tyle. Nie wiem, czy się w czasie zmieściłam.
Tak, dziękujemy bardzo. My oczywiście wszystkie kontakty wyślemy razem z nagraniem tego webinaru. I teraz poprosimy pana Piotra, żeby zakończył, że tak powiem, tą serię różnych aspektów. Pan Piotr tutaj podkreśli, pokaże te aspekty marketingowe przy zakładaniu działalności w Niemczech.
Witam Państwa, pozdrawiam uczestników. Proszę Państwa, zauważyliśmy w naszej działalności, jednak jesteśmy już ponad 20 lat na rynku, że szczególnie firmy informatyczne mają problem z marketingiem, zdefiniowaniem, co my produkujemy, jaki typ usługi, dla jakiej grupy odbiorców i jaki problem rozwiązujemy. Co mogę podpowiedzieć? Warto, szczególnie dzisiaj, kiedy mamy pandemię i te relacje te osobiste są może trudniejsze, mamy mniej targów i tak dalej. Warto zanalizować rynek pod kątem marketingu, czyli zdefiniowanie grupy docelowej. Ja jestem inżynierem mechanikiem, inżynierem energetykiem oraz skończyłem w Niemczech jeszcze studia związane z marketingiem dla technologii. W związku z tym patrzę też na firmy technologiczne, takie jak właśnie z branży IT, troszeczkę inaczej, jak powinny formułować swoje cele, jeśli chodzi o ekspansję zagraniczną. Rynek niemiecki, nikomu nie muszę chyba tłumaczyć, bliskość miasta Berlina jest potężnym rynkiem potencjalnych zleceniodawców. Jest to gospodarka globalna, tym bardziej należy się precyzyjnie przygotować do startu na tym rynku. Myślę, że to oczywiście strategia dla firm kilkuosobowych, czy średnich i dużych będzie zawsze troszeczkę inna, w zależności od tego, czy firmy chcą zaoferować swoje usługi, wsparcie, czy jako tak zwane OM, czyli ze swoim logiem, czy chcą być partnerami w projektach, gdzie właściwie może nie jest wymieniana firma, ale jest już dostęp do pewnych tematów, gdzie firmy mogą się uczyć, co branża medyczna na przykład poszukuje, co branża budowy maszyn. Tutaj bym może podpowiedział, żeby samemu jako firma informatyczna, co rzadko spotykałem, to dziwnie zabrzmi, żeby samemu dla własnej firmy stworzyć rodzaj CRM, jakiegoś programu CRM, który jednak te kontakty, które Państwo mają, bądź które będziecie nawiązywać, szczególnie za granicą, były w pewnym sensie zsegmentowane. Bo tu trzeba zdecydować się, czy oferujemy pewien produkt i szukamy klientów, czy szukamy potencjalnych klientów, mówią oni o swoich problemach i my mówimy, że tak, my wam to rozwiążemy. Także to jest dosyć istotne poukładanie takich relacji. Sądzę, że bardzo ciekawym takim bym podpowiedział jest przyjrzenie się na przykład branżom, jakie wymieniają na swojej stronie internetowej Światowe Targi Przemysłu w Hannowerze. W bardzo prosty sposób mogą Państwo zobaczyć, czy te branże, które są ważne w gospodarce niemieckiej, które też są źródłem sukcesu tej gospodarki globalnie, na ile, do której branży Państwo jesteście w stanie coś zaoferować. Bo albo właśnie decydujecie się na odważne wystąpienie, że tak, jesteśmy w stanie dany problem rozwiązać, albo nawiązujecie branże, które dominują w gospodarce niemieckiej. Zapotrzebowanie w branży IT wzrosło, to chyba nie muszę o tym się rozwodzić. Szczególnie koronawirus pokazał, że dużo programów, software'ów było niedoskonałych. Także zapotrzebowanie na partnerów, poddostawców, bo chyba to jest najwygodniejszy krok wejścia na rynek niemiecki. Pierw podejść do małych projektów, gdzie możemy może jeszcze nie zbyt, nawet nieopłacalną rolę odegrać, ale spróbować wystąpić jako poddostawca. Oczywiście równolegle, jeśli Państwo macie własne produkty gotowe, to warto oczywiście, jeśli jest budżet na marketing, który zawsze pożera dużo pieniążków, z logiem występować. Myślę, że w tym wypadku warto też taką mieszaną mieć strategię, kiedy jest wasze logo, wasz produkt, ale i oprócz tego usługa. Usługa w pewnych projektach. Sądzę, że bliskość Polski też fizyczna jest dosyć dużym i ciekawym argumentem. Wiele firm niemieckich jakby kiedyś próbowało szukać kontaktów z dużo tańszymi firmami, jeśli chodzi o cenę usług z Ukrainy, ale jednak, czy z Indii, okazało się, że firmy niemieckie zauważyły, że jednak te kulturowe elementy w budowaniu zespołów mają też tak dużą rolę, że bardzo wręcz są sami zainteresowani wyszukiwaniem partnerów z Polski. Także to, że Państwo są poszukiwani, to jest wręcz, jak przyjąć można jako aksjomat. Kwestia teraz, z kim Państwo sobie tam rozpoczniecie tę działalność. Także tutaj myślę, te elementy organizacji firmy są może nawet ważniejsze, żeby później skutecznie marketingiem wybrać sobie partnerów. To, co jest istotne, to właśnie miejsce jednak, posiadanie firmy w Niemczech, to wyzwala jednak większe zaufanie i szybszą dyskusję o potencjalnej współpracy. Mimo że jesteśmy poprzez internet globalną wioską, ale klient, partner w Niemczech jest dosyć konserwatywny i zależy mu jednak, żeby te relacje między firmami były też w ramach prawa niemieckiego. To też jest istotne, żeby serwer był w Niemczech, żeby była firma w Niemczech. Wtedy całe te relacje o współpracy też podlegają prawu niemieckiemu i wtedy jest o wiele większa skłonność partnerów niemieckich do nawiązania po prostu współpracy. Obsługujemy różne firmy, również z e-commerce, jak Intercars. Wspieramy także w tym temacie logistycznym firmy z e-commerce, przy czym wspieramy również, jeśli chodzi o prowadzenie administracyjne firm w Niemczech, w Berlinie, gdzie mamy sami powierzchnię biurową, gdzie firmy mogą wygodnie organizować sobie spotkania. To w wielkim skrócie jestem do dyspozycji, w razie czego czekam na pytania, teraz czy później e-mailem. Dziękuję za uwagę.
Dziękuję bardzo za nakreślenie i wskazanie tych najważniejszych takich punktów, na które warto się skupić przy jakby w myśleniu i ekspansji na rynek niemiecki. Tak jak już wcześniej mówiłam, wyślemy to nagranie do wszystkich uczestników. Będzie to także również taki materiał do naszej, tak powiem, biblioteki, więc wszystkie firmy, które będą zainteresowane ekspansją bądź to na rynek niemiecki, bądź na rynek polski, będą mogły jeszcze raz sobie odsłuchać tego webinaru. Dziękuję ślicznie wszystkim prezenterom za dzisiejszy udział i za czas poświęcony. Pozwolę sobie przekazać Państwa kontakty w reminderze do wszystkich zarejestrowanych uczestników i będziemy w kontakcie. Dziękuję bardzo i życzę udanego wieczoru.
Dziękuję.
Dziękuję.